Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's a new seasonal 59 degrees today. And according to Thomas Jefferson, the humidity is 54 and the winds are at 7, and I feel it a little bit, but I don't think so much as to interfere with my voice. This morning, I was busy shouting at one of the persons who warned the military that they have a right to disobey unlawful orders. And the questioner asked, so what unlawful orders are we talking about? And wrongly, the spokesperson retreated to say, well, what they are, or are there any now? And they stumbled. And I don't know if it was tactical or cowardly, but they couldn't say the obvious unlawful orders, like blowing up ships. How about that for starters? In international waters, murder, violation of international law. How about that? Or how about our warlike posture with Venezuela without authority from Congress? If you're in the military and they tell you to do something consistent with that publicly announced but never declared war against Venezuela, should you obey an order in those circumstances? How about occupying U.S. democratic cities to the exclusion of others on the pretense that you're there because there's some sort of emergency, but there's not. And there's no warlike concern that we're defending against. And what about deporting alleged illegal aliens without proving that they are, without any due process? That's the state of affairs. And when Trump is talking about killing, executing persons who are informing the military to be concerned that they not perform an unlawful order, that they disobey an unlawful order. If we are not dealing with that, we are not dealing with what is an imminent concern and should be an imminent concern, because as Trump loses power in his base, will he try to use the organs of government to do more unlawful orders, to do the kind of thing that this message that they're making should stymie? We want people to know in the military that there is something for them to do, and it is to disobey an unlawful order. But when a spokesperson says, I don't know what is an unlawful order, when there are so many right now that involve the military, are we undercutting the advice we're giving? And the question is, was that done out of ignorance? Was that a calculation? Which was it? When they made the statement, that is, the several members of Congress made the statement that you may and must disobey an unlawful order, and they quoted Nuremberg, and they quoted military justice provisions, and they talked about hypotheticals. We have to have those known to the public. And to say there isn't one now when there are several, and there will be more, and to suggest what they would be like, that's doing a service to our military men and women. That's doing a service to the nation so they can get behind whatever is necessary in those circumstances. There's more. Another offensive thing on the morning talk shows is this notion that Trump can make a deal with Russia and then without allowing Ukraine to be present and to be part of any negotiation, they get a take it or leave it situation. And that's because Trump is beholden out of fear or favor to Putin and Russia. That's his deal. His deal is to take their part. So it's like Russia is talking to itself when they propose a deal, particularly when Ukraine's not at the table. And they say, take it or leave it, which could be the destruction and death of many people from he who would be a peace seeker, a Nobel Peace Prize winner. What ridiculous nonsense. And so we have to keep this in mind when they try to put Zelensky in this position and try to prevent him from participating as a full partner in these discussions. You know, among the two most obvious errors here are to say you can't join NATO. Obviously, that's worth talking about, given how we got to this so many years after Zelensky, in Trump's mind, made the mistake of saying he didn't have an investigation of Biden and wouldn't do one. And don't kid yourself, that carries forth from then to now, because that's the kind of guy he is. So one is, we don't want you joining NATO. And two is, we want to give territory to Putin that he has not secured in battle. So Trump wants to act as a regiment given to Putin more than he's already, quote, conquered, if that's appropriate, or at least where he insists and contends he's holding on to the land. It's not acceptable. And Senator Warner spoke out about it today, against this deal and this proposal. And so now there's been some pushback. And the deadline of Thanksgiving, how ironic, was what Trump put out there. And he said, no conversation, take it or leave it. I guess you just go on in war after that. Yes, war to your own death, because the United States pulls the rug out from beneath you, having misled you for so long, for reasons it can't quite come out and say, which is Trump prizes Russia over Ukraine, while the American people have a different position about it. We believe that nation states should not be invaded and taken over. And with the history with Russia, you would think we knew that. But there's a whole new gang in town that have deals with Russia that do not serve American security and American historical allies. AOC, different topic, called out Representative Green for leaving with her whatever portion of her salary she can have in retirement benefits and other things. And everybody's saying, why did she do it? Well, she could be a coward, that's possible. And her talk about afraid of threats is to make her hero as victim. And she's tried to embrace her new identity, I think, by pulling close to the survivors and victims of the sex ring of girls and others. And she says the right thing in that circumstance. But again, is this political theater for her? Is this her finding another path for her to have effect politically? Is this her perceiving that Trump's days as a successor, as he becomes a lame duck, is a time when you don't want to be tied too tightly to Trump? Not if you want to test your own ability to run for the presidency, perhaps become a vice president, under a Republican ticket headed by her or someone else. That may seem like a reach today, but the coverage of her, sort of like just as a hero for being a victim of Trump, he calls her a traitor. And he says it in the same week that he's talking about those who are concerned about unlawful military orders. And Trump comes back and he says, if a traitor, they deserve death. How does that work? So there's a lot going on now, and in the political hall of mirrors, these things have to be seen as intermediate steps going someplace else. And these vectors, and I used that term the other day, on the Republican side, appear to be Trump setting something up that will involve New York, and Congresswoman Green setting up something that will favor her politically in the here and now. And we can't forget how craven she was on so many positions that affect so many people. And we have to beware the feeling that we can be too exuberant over a sane position that pops out of the Republican miasma and think it reflects a coming together. I think it is more like a desperation in Republicans to reinvent themselves because they see the risk of being too tight to Trump. The polling statistics tell us that. His unpredictable behavior tells us something. He sits all the time because his doctors probably tell him to sit, not stand. We don't know what other ills he has, but he has other ills. The dynamic of the present situation is that lawlessness and an effort to be a dictator sooner rather than later is driving Trump, and he is coming a cropper, taking positions that others do not take in the party, in his caucus. So Trump knows we're hungry for reasonable behavior, so he sets up himself as a friend to New York so that in the months ahead he can then attack as he feels necessary to the mayor and perhaps to the governor as well. So people who are enthusiastic about these developments, looking in the short view, are missing the fact that this is theater. And the theater may all be on Trump's side, and it is so he can characterize himself as, I was a big supporter of him. But then what did he do? Oh, this thing with apartments, and I know something about buildings, and I tried to tell him what to do. And now he's got crime because he's not doing the things he said. The whole story. And that's what we should expect. So, do I have any shining examples of heroes that would act as a balm, B-A-L-M, for the kind of predatory behavior of Trump, not limited to the Epstein matter? And there was a memorial service last week for Jane Goodall. There's a woman, a person, who is a breath of fresh air. As DiCaprio described her, she was a legendary primatologist and a unique voice. And there'll be a movie about that, and I'd encourage myself and all of you to watch it when it comes out. But here's a person who cared so much about animal rights, conservation, ecology, waste, and it was such a strong, vibrant voice until her final moments. She just didn't stop working. That's the kind of person we should be celebrating, not criminals and takers and hateful people like Trump and his corrupt minion. So that's what I got to say in my cathedral of trees. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.